Seasoned digital strategist, and he's the director of the Blue Road Group, which delivers digital coaching to senior executives and digital transformation services to business. Simon was also the founder and the managing director of Hot House Interactive, which is one of Australia's pioneering digital agencies. With his experience, he's a respected commentator on a wide range of digital areas. Simon, welcome.
No, thanks, Ray.
All right, well, let's get stuck into it. Now, the first thing we wanted to speak about was the connection between the idea of disruption and innovation, and in particular, you know, the origins of that and how it applies to smaller businesses. Now, I know, this uses a lot of the work of Clayton Christensen, who came up with that concept of the innovator's dilemma a number of years ago. Maybe you can tell us how that relates to organizations that want to disrupt their own business.
Well, I think it's important to understand first what Christensen meant about disruption. And because it's now misused, it's applied to political ideologies, it's spread all over the place. Everything's disruptive, and it's not actually as he first saw it. So Clayton Christensen wrote his book about the floppy drive industry. There was an industry that went from zero to hero very, very quickly as computing entered into every major organisation. The companies in that space were extremely competitive, worked really closely with their customers, delivered innovative product every year, and that innovation came by the way of cost and speed and storage capacity, and all of that stuff happened. They were, by every measure, really well run. They were profitable, they were very close to their customers, their systems and processes were really smart and well managed. But what happened was personal computing arrived, and personal computing presented the opportunity for a cheaper floppy drive because the people buying personal computers were happy with less. They didn't need the speed, they didn't need the storage capacity that had been built into this thing. So all of a sudden you got a new category of drive maker that came in at a lower price point, a lower spec, everything that the existing organisations kind of scoffed at. No one wants one of them. Well, none of their customers did, and no one will expect that. And all of a sudden the industry changed and shifted, and most of those companies never survived. And so Clayton Christensen's in a disruption was about that particular style of innovation that comes in, undercuts at price because people are happy to settle for less. And so if you apply that into today's terms, you'd have to argue that something like Netflix is disruptive. We've, 15 years ago, no one would have dreamed that you'd be delivering video over the internet. Anybody that's been around for a long time knows the struggles that we've had to deliver first video on PCs and then over the internet, and the bandwidth issues and all of that. And so, but all of a sudden, that the impediments have gone away because the internet's here and everybody's connected. The technology has upgraded itself. Computers are faster. Look at the technology you get in a mobile phone these days. And all of a sudden, delivering video on all of these devices is a possibility. So in comes Netflix, offers a really well-priced all-you-can-eat bundle that says, download what you want, when you want, and how you want for $9 a month. And it effectively has disrupted television. I mean, Channel 7 wrote $1 billion off their market cap last year off the back of the fact that none of their media brands are worth as much money anymore. And that's a classic disruption. Another one is Uber, which has really come in with the technology, said to people who've got cars, you can earn extra money, you can become a taxi driver. There's no question that's disrupted the taxi industry. Taxi licenses in Melbourne were $400,000, they're now sub $100,000.
Wow.
So that's what they mean about disruption. Airbnb, on the other hand, is not really seen as disruption. Airbnb is just a new product category. You can now book a night in someone's home instead of in a hotel or something. So he was very specific about what disruption means, and it is kind of important to understand that, because it gives you a framework for understanding whether your industry is ripe for disruption or not.
Right. Okay. So we're being sold the idea that, you know, disruption, well, I suppose it's inevitable, but also that it's a good thing. You know, our Prime Minister is going and saying there's never been a more exciting time to be an Australian, and I think that that same thing would apply to business. Now, is that actually the case for smaller businesses, small and medium enterprises? How can they harness this power of disruption?
Well, I think if you have a look at what's available to a small business today, you've got the Snowpo business, a bunch of young women that have started a kind of online fashion business, and they are able to buy all their product offshore in the volumes that work for them. They're able to import it in manner, you know, because the infrastructure to import stuff is now there. I mean, remember how much it used to cost to send a parcel in Australia? Kind of all of that stuff's changed dramatically. So they're able to buy product offshore because it's really easy to deal with people offshore now. They're able to bring it in, and they're able to build a system that allows them to sell that product to the rest of the world. And that, if you think about that ability is a really new thing. You can start a business with next to nothing these days. And, you know, I go back to the first job I had, which was working in the home improvements industry. And you get someone that wanted to set up a small factory to sell, you know, window coverings and things. There'd be, you know, $500,000 worth of cost that had to go into that. First they had to buy equipment, then they had to put that equipment in, then they had to get staff, then they had to kind of, you know, use expensive advertising mechanisms to sell themselves to the rest of the world, because you had radio and TV, that was kind of, you know, and newspapers, that was kind of it. And so, you know, it was an enormous amount of risk that somebody had to invest in before they could start a business like that. Now you've got all these stories about people starting small businesses on, you know, their credit card, or, you know, $2,000 they borrowed from mum. So I think that's fundamentally the change, but it's not necessarily an easy one for small and medium business to come to grips.
Yeah, so Kevin Kelly, who is a technology writer, he helped, I think he was involved in the startup of Wired magazine all those years ago, and well-respected expert. He was even, you know, said recently that within 20 years' time, we'll look back at this current days as a golden age of business. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, if you look at the opportunity now for a business starting, we've got most of the world's population connected to the internet, and that portion of the population that's not connected to the internet will be connected. I mean, you can go to Africa and buy almost anything on your mobile phone. So you go to any poor country, any developing country, and you walk along the road and you'll see somebody in the field there, you know, with a mobile phone texting someone in the field. You know, that the world has been wired up. That's the start of it. So from the perspective of being able to get to those people, we can. The ability to come up with ideas and realize those ideas has never been greater, because, you know, it's easy and it's cheap, and you can build a business online relatively inexpensively. You can experiment with things online relatively expensively. You have the opportunity to kick something off. And you think about where we are now, simply because all of that stuff is there. You'll have people in most suburbs of Australia operating small businesses on Airbnb, because they've got an extra room in their house, or they've got a granny flat they're not using. And you think about what it takes to do that. One, they've got to have digital images and video of their property so they can show it off. Well, anybody can do that now. You can do it on your mobile phone. You've got to have somewhere to distribute that stuff. Well, you've got it. Airbnb allow you to distribute that stuff. And you need a big enough audience to actually, who are looking for things to, fill up a small apartment in Surrey Hills. Well, you've got that because you've now got a global audience and, academics coming and looking for something near Sydney Uni and all of that stuff. So all of a sudden, we've unburdened ourselves from the constraints of the past. And they're things, and all of this has come together relatively recently in a whole lot of ways, if you think about it. The rise of mobile, the changing the global structure, the wiring up of almost everyone on the planet, services like Facebook and things that have got billions of users actively engaged in them. Who've actually, if you think about it, Facebook have done every business a huge favour because they've taught a whole lot of people that would never really have come to grips with the technology how to use really sophisticated applications. You think of the things,
if you look at the age profile of people who are using Facebook these days, it's people that 20 years ago you would have thought, oh, they're way too old, they'll never embrace technology. But as you say, that's who's on Facebook these days.
Yeah, and Facebook has taught them to use that stuff, and grandma sending the kids pics around and liking stuff and finding, all of that has paved the way for really interesting and exciting things.
Okay, so I can see all the the good things and how much easier it is to start a business, but I suppose if you've got an existing business and you're looking at the opportunities that are out there, there is still a certain amount of risk in moving on from what you've been doing, and probably your accountant is saying, oh, you don't do anything too crazy or whatever. Can risk actually be a good thing for a business that's trying to decide if and how to change direction in a huge way?
Look, I think risk is wired into everything we do, and so most businesses are used to living with a certain amount of risk, particularly small to medium ones who operate in a risky environment every day. But I think the issue with risk and innovation is about creating a system that allows you to manage that risk in a better way, so that at the end of the day you might be moving the business forward, you might be making significant changes to the markets the business operates in or the clients you deal with, but you're actually making bets that you can afford to lose because they're small enough. And I think that's the whole thing about managing risk and delivering innovation at the same time, is about finding a way to make every step you take a step that doesn't actually bet the farm. It just bets the business's ability to make the next decision.
Yeah, okay, no, that makes sense. So how do smaller businesses get started on that sort of activity? Like thinking about developing an innovation system. How does that work?
Look, no innovation happened without time, effort and money. So the first thing the organisation needs to do is actually make a group of people responsible for driving these initiatives. And there's no point in making this a kind of part-time thing. I want you to do your job and I want you to do all this innovation at the same time. But the business can step their way through this process in a meaningful way. Let's say, for example, the business has decided to start an innovation system. Well, the first thing you would do is the business would allocate one or two senior people to being the champion of that innovation, and they would separate a proportion of their time to managing that thing. And then the first thing you might do is run some innovation summits where you get groups of people together in the organisation to talk about the two things that innovation's fundamentally about, which is what new products can we create that might open our way to new markets, or what can we do to our existing customers that we're not doing now? So what can we, at the end of the day, that's what business is about, either finding new products that you can sell to new customers, or finding new customers that you can excel your existing product to. So you would start with a discussion about what those things might be, a brainstorming, and then you would go away, and your first bet would be to take 5 or 6 ideas that you dreamt up in this, 2 weeks of kind of innovation workshops. Take the 5 ideas that the company deems the most valuable, and you would give people the responsibility for going away and doing, let's say, 2 weeks of market research about those particular projects. So 5 people go off with 5 ideas and do the market research, talk to some customers, understand what the competitive landscape looks like, look at some pricing and stuff, and then come back with those ideas and present them back in to that senior manager whose job is to run that innovation system. And out of that, 3 of them are going to drop off the vine because they're not going to work, too expensive. But what have you done? You've spent 2 weeks of somebody's time. That's about all, it costs money, but you've spent 2 weeks of someone's time. And then you would take the 2 ideas and you would move them along a little bit, and you would come to understand whether they were real opportunities. And then you might prototype something on the web and see if somebody would like to use it. And you just move it along in very small steps, but a very structured way with formal gates. So, for example, in some businesses, they would say to the business, I'm going to give you a business I know, they've put 5 people in an innovation group, and they gave them a period of time to come up with some ideas, and they took those 3 ideas and whittled them down to 1. And then the business said, we are going to give you 2 months of $35,000 to get to the next step, and the next step is a working prototype. So they went away and built the working prototype, and the business spent $30,000 on it, and the prototype came back, and the prototype was actually so successful that they found themselves under pressure then to actually roll that out and do more with it. But it's just about being deliberate at the end of the day, and stepping through a formal process where things get signed off properly.
Yeah, okay. Now, smaller businesses tend to have a lot of experience of doing things on the smell of an oily rag.
Yeah.
So they're probably used to doing, being lean with their activities. How do the lean methodologies that are coming up to the fore today, how do they fit in to what businesses can do with their innovation systems?
Yeah, okay. Well, the lean the lean concepts are frameworks that help manage and drive innovation, and there's the lean canvas, and there's the lean business experiment, and there's a whole number of tools that businesses can pick up and use. But the heart of here's the best way of explaining the lean. I have a client that had a $500,000 quote from an agency of theirs to implement a project, and the project covered some new ground. It was technically quite risky, and there was going to be a lot of new learning in it. And so what I did by bringing it back to the lean principles is we said, look, what are the things we need to work out for that big idea to be successful? And one of the first thing was, could we attract customers in volumes big enough to make the rest of the work worthwhile? Well, we could do that work on working out whether we could get that volume of customers with one experiment that only cost them $8,000.
Wow.
So we ran an experiment. Could we get the numbers? I mean, we had a manual system in the back, and we were going to deal with the pain and heartache of dealing with the issue manually. But we found in the first experiment we couldn't get enough customers. We couldn't get the volumes. So the next experiment we ran was to understand why we couldn't get the volumes and to create another hypothesis about whether the volumes existed somewhere else, or whether we weren't putting the right offer in front of those people, or whether we could perhaps think of another way to do the same thing. And so the whole principle of lean is just by breaking stuff down into very deliberate steps about what do we have to know to step this whole process forward. If that's what we need to know, what's the least amount of money and resource we can devote to actually answering that question. And if you look at the lean and you go and you read about how Uber and Airbnb started, I mean, those things started, Uber started because there were a bunch of guys that used to go out drinking in San Francisco, and they couldn't get taxis home at night, so they created a funny little network for them to deal with this, and then it expanded out from there, and Airbnb started with a couch sort of sharing. And so they've just worked these things forward. And if you look at Amazon today, Amazon's the perfect example of a business that has started with books years ago, made those a little bit better, worked on their conversion rates, and they've just been extremely deliberate about pushing things agenda forward to make themselves the easiest company on the planet to deal with, that's actually the heart of this innovation thing. The problem we look at is we look at Facebook at the multi-billion-dollar valuation. We look at all these things and assume that they exploded out of a teenager's bedroom, but it's actually not how they happen. Some of those things have had years of work before we see them, because it's about someone using the lean principles to hone an idea, make it work for the customer it's intended to, and really understand what the business wants and how they want it.
Right. Okay. Now it sounds to me like one of the outcomes of this lean principles is that it's okay to make mistakes as long as they're not big ones, and you learn from them and you move on. I guess another way of looking at that, and I think I've read this in some of your writings, is using the phrase, that if you're not failing, you're not innovating. So does that mean, should businesses be more prepared to fail maybe than they have in the past?
Yeah, you hear that a lot, and all business hates failure. But I think the point of that they're making in this fail fast is, if you have a look at that project I was talking about, the $500,000 project, ultimately the client has an hypothesis that they think is right, and the job of failing fast is to prove or not disprove that hypothesis. Ultimately, we're trying to make what the client wants to work, but it's actually not that simple, because there are a lot of variables in terms of where we get the customers from, what we present to them, what time of day we do it, how we might put a particular message in front of them. Are they going to respond to that message? If they respond to that message, how do we deal with that response? What's the best way to do it? There's a lot of complexity in all of these things. And so what they mean by fail fast is, going back to my example, can you get people in enough volume by running a search campaign? No, we can't. Well, can we get enough money? Can we get enough volume by running a search campaign and a Facebook campaign? Maybe or maybe not. But it's about moving forward with very small steps that haven't cost a lot of money, that aren't betting the farm, to actually really, really, really understand the customer deeply and the customer's desires deeply and what they do and what they want and how they want it. Because if you think of these things now, you pick up a app for the Uber app, okay, and you go and you book a taxi. The way it works, the feedback you get, it's very intuitive, it's very easy to do. The process that they step you through to put your credit card in there, the emails that you get are really well structured. Everything about that process is finely honed, but it's finely honed out of a million small experiments. There's no way that they said to some digital agency or a bunch of programmers, build us this taxi app thing and make it work. It just doesn't work like that.
So it's more, I suppose, like fail fast, fail small, and then you're able to move forward and work out what actually works.
Yeah, if you go back to primary school science, it's kind of primary school science. What is the aim of my experiment? What methodology am I going to use? And then when I've done that, I've got a bunch of results, and what does that prove, and what conclusion can I draw? And essentially it's about breaking things down in a structured manner into lots of small experiments, running them, proving them or disproving them, and then moving on. I mean, we're now in a world where we're all quite distracted because there's a lot of stuff on, and there's a lot of things competing for our time. So if you pick up an app and you go, it doesn't, you'll never go, you just don't go back there if it's too hard, or if you try and engage with a business and it doesn't quite work, or the call centre doesn't quite work. All of those things require that none of them are solved in a simple way. It all understands a very deep understanding of what we're trying to do, who we're trying to do it for, what they really need, how they're going to work with it. And so I think that's fundamentally what's meant by the fail fast, because out of all of those things, if you run a massive experiment trying to prove 1,000 things and the experiment fails, I guarantee you every organisation that we all know, organisations have placed big bets on things, and a lot of the time those bets fail. And then what happens is you have one of those workshop meetings where everyone gets in and you do an evaluation of what went wrong. And then first it's customer service's fault, then it's the sales guy's fault, then marketing's fault, then the development guys, and then the factory buggered it up, and all of that thing. And those, I mean, we've all been in meetings like that, But at the end of the day, no one's got any clue, really. There's no value in that experiment. I mean, in the $500,000 example, I get if the client had spent $500,000, they would have had nothing to show for it. They would have had no knowledge out of that experiment that they don't have today. So they would have learned nothing. They would have spent $500,000 having it fail, and we'd be no better off, and we'd still be looking around for some magic wand. But by spending that money, I mean, ultimately they're happy to spend $500,000, but if they spend that $500,000 in a whole number of $5,000 experiments, ultimately at the end of that they'll know a lot about it. If it works, they'll know exactly why it worked, what the magic was, what customers need, how they need to be dealt with. So that's actually the heart of the lean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, look, I think that gives small and medium businesses a much better idea of all of the concepts that they need to work through when they're thinking about disrupting their own business. Now, when we were organising the webinar, we asked people to see what questions they might have, and we've had a question that's come through from one of our registrants that I might ask, and this person was trying to find out, how much money should you spend on research and development or these innovation type products? If you're going to have to disrupt your business, how much of your revenue should you be allocating to that?
I've looked at, if you look at Apple, Amazon particularly, I mean, they bet an enormous percentage of, I think it's 25% of their effort goes to actually disrupting their own business. So
Wow.
they're extremely aggressive about it, and they've been on that journey for a long time, and they're now really good at it. I'm not sure anybody. I don't know. I've not seen a percentage that people say, "Oh, well, that's the right percentage." But if you look at a small to medium business, it's really about how much could you invest, and then creating a structure and a process to break that amount down into a range of small steps and a more innovative and a structured way of actually dealing with that R&D money. So often R&D money becomes a sort of tax deduction that's kind of, oh, well, we'll write that off to the R&D fund. And also, you can't actually say to someone, innovate. I want innovation.
Yeah.
And, if you're out of here, and you're out of here if you can't deliver it, because the other thing about innovation is it can come from anywhere in the organisation, because everyone has. So you actually need these things to be cross-functional, because people bring different perspectives. And you need a way of managing it. And so I think, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, look, we might wrap things up there. Simon, thanks very much for your time. Now we'll be sending you a link to the recording and some resources that we've got on Business Propel about disruption and innovation. And also keep your eyes out in your inbox for invitations to other upcoming webinars that we're going to be running through Business Propel. So just remember, Business Propel is here to help you move your business forward by helping you achieve your business goals and plan for the future. Welcome to our next Business Propel webinar. Today we're talking about disrupting your own business. And with us today we've got Simon Van Wyk. Now Simon is a seasoned digital strategist, and he's the director of the Blue Road Group, which delivers digital coaching to senior executives and digital transformation services to business. Simon was also the founder and the managing director of Hothouse Interactive, which is one of Australia's pioneering digital agencies. With his experience, he's a respected commentator on a wide range of digital areas. Simon, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.
All right, well, let's get stuck into it. Now, the first thing we wanted to speak about was the connection between the idea of disruption and innovation, and in particular, the origins of that and how it applies to smaller businesses. Now, I know this uses a lot of the work of Clayton Christensen,